Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
And let me add my welcome to RIT for those of you who are new. For those of you who are not new, we're glad to have you back. I've been asked to talk about the power of the syllabus. A few words of warning here. Last year when I did this workshop, they gave me an hour and a half. This year they only gave me an hour. And of course, like all good scholars, I said everything that I have to say is important, so I didn't take anything out. So it will be rushed. But as you probably are aware by now, the presentation is on the wiki, and as well as some other resources that might be helpful to you as you're thinking about your syllabus. We have now just under 2 weeks to prepare syllabi, so I'm sure you haven't done that yet. So hopefully this will be helpful as you're thinking or perhaps rethinking what you've done for your syllabus. A little bit about what I do in the College of Liberal Arts, and what drew me to this topic is one of the responsibilities I have in the College of Liberal Arts on behalf of the Dean's Office is I deal with all of the student issues, often referred to as student complaints. And often those complaints arise from the failure to communicate well on behalf of the professor with their students. And so the more you can communicate and the more you can be attentive to a learner-centered understanding of who your students are, I can tell you that the complaints will be reduced. And we'll talk a little bit more about what kind of complaints we're talking about, but it's always the professor didn't tell me this, or I didn't understand what the professor said, or this wasn't fully explained. I saw it on the syllabus, but I didn't know it counted towards my final grade, those kinds of things. So as I heard more and more of this from students, I began to think, well, what are we doing to communicate with students? So my interest in learner-centered syllabus, I'm now just a student of this, of learner-centered pedagogy, and I'm sure some of you who have more experience than others may have already thought about a lot of these things. So hopefully this is not just old hat and boring to you, but hopefully there'll be a few things here that maybe you can share. I have a clicker. Okay. Sorry, put my glasses on. I'm also an attorney by training, so I talk really fast. So, all right, which of these is the right one? There it is. Here's what I hope to cover in an hour and a half, but I only have an hour. I do want to know a little bit more from you, who you are. We've already heard a little bit. What does it mean to be learner-centered? There's a great literature on this, and so I'm just really going to skim the top of what we understand about our students. Dr. Licata has given you kind of an understanding and appreciation for some of the profile and how our students learn, but I want to talk a little bit more about that. But please, if this is of interest to you, and I hope it is, please delve into the literature, because it is robust and very, very helpful as you're thinking about your classroom. Talk a little bit about what's the purpose of a syllabus, and then talk about content, and then some additional resources. Here, I like, when I work with faculty, I like to kind of talk the talk, walk the talk. But this is a workshop. This is not a classroom, so I don't have an opportunity to get to know you. I don't have an opportunity to be learner-centered too much. But I do want to advise you that be engaged. If you are texting, I'll be really upset. Ask questions at any time. But if you do, please keep your comments brief, to the point. If you have things to share, please, not just questions. And then if we can't get to this, I'll be around during the break. And if you want to have some individual conversation, I'd be really happy to do that. I just want to get to know you a little bit better. Typically what I would do in a classroom is I would have you do an online survey that would help me understand, even in a class this large, it would help me understand who the student is. So I typically on that survey will ask about what your program is, what year you are, what other experiences you've had, whether out of classroom or in classes that link to the course that we're about to engage in together, the kinds of things that would help me better understand who they are as learners. In a class this large, obviously the opportunity for intimate personal relationships is somewhat limited just because of time limitations more than anything. But you folks are really lucky, because next year we're on semesters, and you got a lot more time to engage your students. 10 weeks goes really, really fast if you've not taught in a quarter calendar. And so you don't have time to get sick, by the way, just so you know. But also the student who gets sick or has a family emergency or some other emergency that takes them out of the classroom, you have to be, as part of your learner-centered orientation, you have to be really attentive to what a 10-week quarter does to a student and what happens if they miss and what you can do to help that student catch up. So I know that many of you here have teaching experience. I want to know, how many of you taught 5 years or more? Wow, that's so cool. That's great. 5 years to 3 years, 3 years to 5 years? 1 to 3 years. And 0 we know is 4. Great. But you'll be right with us by the end of this. I want to see the distribution in colleges. So I had to make a list because there are 9 of us now, and I never remember them all. NTID. Thank you. College of Science. Saunders College. Engineering. College of Liberal Arts. Yay! Sorry, I had to do a shout out. I'm sorry, I couldn't do this. Golisano College. CAST. Health Science and Technology. SIMS. And CIAS. Great, okay, we got a pretty good distribution here. And, you know, ordinarily, again, if I had that other half hour, I would spend a lot of time just hearing from you what your expectations are for this workshop, but that's where I'm going to save some time, so I'm sorry. That's not very a learner-centered thing to do, but besides talking really fast, I told you I didn't take out any slides. In fact, I added some. So what does it mean to be learner-centered? This individual, brunette, I encountered when I was in graduate school in the Maxwell School at Syracuse University. She is an incredible master at understanding learner-centered pedagogy. And she's written this nice little book called the LearnerCentered Syllabus. And it's a tiny little book that doesn't cost very much. So it's a really good starting point to create a stronger foundation of your understanding what does it mean to be learner-centered. But nevertheless, it really does require us as university faculty to really change the orientation. I'm old enough to remember that the cause de rigueur for college teaching was sage on the stage, right? How many of you have had sage on the stage? Oh, come on, really? That's all? I can't believe it. I'm not that old. But I sat in a classroom of 400 students as an undergraduate student at Cornell University, and we were in this enormous room, and there were some people who were actually watching it on television, and you got a 50-minute talk at, right? And then you took your midterm and your final exam, that was it. Things have changed considerably in terms of students' expectations. Sage on the stage is, I think, I know we have some faculty in my college and other colleges who are brilliant at the lecture pedagogical style. But it takes a degree of brilliance to do it, to pull it off well among our current students. They have different expectations. They don't want you to be the only smart person in the room. They really want you to engage them in different ways than the typical 50-minute lecture will allow for. So I would say that learner-centered, like it or not, students will, well, they'll punish you in your student evaluations, but they'll also let you know that they're disappointed if it isn't working for them. And that's the other thing that I have found in just starting my 19th year at RIT, that students have fewer and fewer problems these days of telling you what they like and what they don't like, what makes them happy, what disappoints them. So you'll hear it from the student one way or another. If anything, you go look at ratemyprofessor.com and you'll know what I'm talking about. Well, LearnerCentered Syllabus requires that you as an instructor take it on a different role. The students are the students. But it means that we need to really think quite differently about our obligations. So as Dr. Licata suggested, we had a tech-savvy entering class here. Most of the students at RIT, they come here because of their tech savviness. But they also have expectations that you'll be savvy. And I'm not ashamed to suggest to you that I didn't grow up with the kind of technology that probably most of you find now kind of everyday occurrences in your lives as instructors and as professors and scholars. But I didn't grow up with it, so I had to really force myself to appreciate what does it mean to be tech savvy in a technological university. So what does it mean for you? It means that you perceive learning as a partnership with students. And so what that means is it's no longer, I'm the smart person, open your brain, I pour the information in, I gave you a test, we're done. There's a much different orientation to understanding how students learn. And you become acquainted with students' current knowledge of subject matter. Again, that's why I do this electronic survey at the beginning of every quarter, because I want to know what's the knowledge base from which we're going to be working together. Learning styles, Dr. Licata, I think, gave you a really good overview of what kind of learning styles are most prevalent among our students here at RIT. And so that's really important for you to think about as you're designing your syllabus, and you become acquainted with what students expect to get out of the course. I used to teach a lot of general studies and gen ed courses, so I know that they were there because it fit in their schedule. But you also have to know that they've made some choices about being in your classroom, even if it's a gen ed course and an elective course, but you want to better understand why they chose you and your course. So what do we know about today's college students? How do I get onto this? Click what? Thank you. This is just a really short 4-minute video. It was produced a few years ago, but I think it still gives you kind of an idea of what's happening, particularly in a classroom like this. while this was produced in 2007, it inspired an enormous response. And if you're interested, go look at some of these visions of the student online. There's actually a really interesting one. It takes you through this entire video, and then the rest of it is an English language instructor in Korea who has a whole commentary about Facebook and the problems of Facebook and urging students to get off Facebook. So there's some other interesting things that you learn if you're more interested in going to this. Okay, where's my slideshow? Oh, it's there. Thank you. Okay, so what else does it mean to be learner-centered? Use a variety of instructional approaches based upon multiple intelligence theory and practice. I'm not going to run through all of these, but as I said, you can get all this detail online. But it assumes ultimately responsibility for the learning experience and receives and incorporates feedback from students. So you can think about ways that you might do that. An online survey, I always do, and I'm going to do this a whole lot more in semesters, some mid-course surveys with students on content, on approach, and the like. When you have more time with students, it's going to be a whole lot easier in the semesters. So what does it mean for the student? This would mean that the obligation to think about learner-centered is solely yours. Students perceives the learning as a partnership with the instructor and fellow students. Communicates current knowledge of the subject matter, reflects on and communicates their own learning style. Becomes acquainted with the instructor's learning goals for the course and communicates their own. Is an active participant in all planned instructional approaches. And when I speak to active participants, there are many ways that you can accomplish this, but ultimately assumes responsibility for their own learning and will volunteer feedback for the instructor. The most important document that I believe that any professor will produce is the syllabus. And it is your first opportunity to introduce students to a learner-centered paradigm, and it becomes a valuable resource for students throughout your course. What's the purpose of a syllabus? If you look at any of the online resources or anything that's written in the higher ed journals about syllabi, you'll see that these tend to be the 4 things that are often referenced. As I said, I'm an attorney by training, so I know that this is not a legally binding contract, but you know what? Your students think it is. If you say you're going to do something, they expect you to do it. If there's an obligation that they have, they understand that obligation as having this mutual obligation. So let's talk about some of these. It is an agreement between you and your students, even though I say it's not legally binding. It does give you an opportunity to say, here's what I'm going to do, here's what you're going to do. It gives you an opportunity to be explicit about your policies with regard to the classroom, with regard to the course itself. And consider seriously the policies you want to enforce. I always, when I practice law, I say, don't ask questions that you don't need that information from. When you do survey research, some of you know, you don't ever ask a question in a survey unless that information is going to be germane to your reason for producing that survey. The same thing about classroom policies. Don't put a policy in there if you have no intention of enforcing it. And by remaining in the class after the first day of class, students do course shopping. By remaining in the class, the student consents to the requirements of the syllabus. Essential reference. The syllabus provides the opportunity to anticipate and respond to questions and concerns that they may have, and make your plan crystal clear by avoiding any misleading language. One of the places where I find this to be especially troublesome is in how students will be evaluated. If you have a very complex evaluation system, you're just asking for trouble. Some of you might be able to work that out, but I've not seen any really good proof that a complicated evaluation system really works for students. So these are all actual things that I heard in my 19 years. It's been lessened quite a bit as I've been more intentional about my syllabus. But you didn't announce that was due today. So I'm supposed to tell you how you as a student meet your obligations? I don't think so. I'm giving you a schedule that tells you everything that's due. I didn't think this would count, so therefore I didn't do it. We have a quiz today? Is this going to be on the final exam? You will hear this many times. I will buy you lunch if it doesn't happen, but you will hear it many times. Is this on the final exam? Then you also hear, on what page of the textbook is the right answer, right? Could I do something for extra credit to bring up my grade? You'll get this, I guarantee. Don't fall into that trap. Why are we doing group work? I prefer to work on my own. You're going to hear that, I guarantee. I hate group work. You're going to hear that. Here are the group assignments. I hate group work. You're going to hear it, I guarantee it. It's how the world works, by the way. Just keep reminding them that when they get into the world of work or they get into their own community, it's always done in groups. There's a great book called Group Genius, by the way. I commend it to you. That speaks to the issue that all the great things that we think about, discoveries and inventions in American society, didn't happen on its own. There were always people behind Thomas Alva Edison. I had to miss class last week. I love this one. I get this all the time. Did I miss anything important? Oh no. This is just as well that you weren't here. And then, how can I make up the work? Well, read the syllabus and it'll tell you. So, this little YouTube, where's my technician here? Again, just a 4-minute thing. Oh, I'm doing great on time. I love these. These are fabulous. These are where animations are created out of a voiced script. These are terrific. These are so much fun. If you're having a really bad day, I advise you to go to one of these because it just makes you chuckle out loud. Have any of you seen these? These are so hysterical. And they make you laugh and you say, been there, done that, right?
Professor? Florence, how did you get in my office? I know I locked the door after I came back from lunch, and the syllabus specifically states that my office hours are Mondays and Wednesdays from noon to 3. It is 11 in the morning on Thursday.
I sent you 2 emails 30 minutes ago, but we were unresponsive.
Florence,
I need to talk
how
about
did
my
you get in
grade.
my... What about your grade?
Let me start that over.
Thank you.
You gave me an F for the semester. I thought I was doing very... Professor?
Florence, how did you get in my office? I know I locked the door after I came back from lunch, and the syllabus specifically states that my office hours are Mondays and Wednesdays from noon to 3. It is 11 in the morning on Thursday.
I sent you 2 emails 30 minutes ago, but we were unresponsive. I need to talk about my grade.
What about your grade?
You gave me an F for the semester. I thought I was doing very well in your class.
You thought you were doing very well?
Yes, I thought I was getting a D.
I don't know what to tell you. A D is not a good grade, and you earned an F. You attended class twice, spent all your time texting, and never turned an F.
Just gonna rewind it because the captions were being cut off, so.
Can you pull the screen down just another 2 inches? That might do it.
It's electronic, so I think it's kind of stuck. It's all controlled through the panel here, screen. I think this will work once we. Lights.
Professor?
Florence, how did you get in my office? I know I locked the door after I came back from lunch, and the syllabus specifically states that my office hours are Mondays and Wednesdays from noon to 3. It is 11 in the morning on Thursday.
I sent you 2 emails 30 minutes ago, but we were unresponsive. I need to talk about my grade.
What about your grade?
You gave me an F for the semester. I thought I was doing very well in your class.
You thought you were doing very well?
Yes, I thought I was getting a D.
Well, Lauren, I don't know what to tell you. A D is not a good grade, and you earned an F. You attended class twice, spent all your time texting, and never turned in any work.
But I did turn in work. I gave you my final paper.
Lauren, that was not your paper. It was a photocopy of a chapter from one of the books I assigned to class. A book I authored. There was your name on the top. That is plagiarizing.
This must be a misunderstanding. I never plagiarize.
You did not even include quotation marks at the beginning and end of the chapter to indicate that you were not the original author.
Well, I was not plagiarizing,
You cannot take credit for someone else's work.
but I don't plagiarize. I took freshman English and got a B-. So you see, I could not plagiarize.
I don't understand what your point is.
I got a great grade in freshman English, so I know I did not plagiarize. I am a good writer. You just do not like me.
Lauren, you only turned in one assignment and it wasn't even yours. You deserve an F.
The student handbook says I have rights. I can ask for a trial and make you prove I plagiarized.
What is the point? I will spend hours filling out paperwork which will only state the obvious. It was not your work.
But you have favorites, and you let other people plagiarize. Tiffany plagiarized, and you did not give her an F.
I do not have favorites. Tiffany did not fail because she did not plagiarize. She used the wrong style in her bibliography. But that is really none of your business anyway.
But I did well in freshman English. I could not plagiarize. Besides, if I fail your course, I will be dismissed from the university. It will be all your fault.
All my fault?
Yes, the university has this stupid rule that your grade point average cannot fall below 2.0 for 3 consecutive semesters after being dismissed. So if I am dismissed, it will be all your fault.
What about all the other courses in which you must have done poorly? Your transcript shows you received 3 Ds and a C- last semester, and before that, you earned 2 Fs, a D, and a C. How could that possibly mean I am responsible for you failing out of college?
It will be all your fault. My parents will be very sad that they cannot see me walk at graduation this spring. You will have ruined my life.
Lauren, why are you texting while we are speaking?
I am writing the first of 50 emails which I will send you daily until you change my grade.
Did you ask your other professors to change your grade?
No, they are men.
What does that matter?
Male professors are supposed to be gruff and uncaring. It is a sign of their intelligence. You are not a man. Everyone knows female professors are supposed to be motherly. You should be hugging me now. If you're done, it must mean you're a bad professor.
Lauren, that doesn't make any sense. Why are you texting again?
I am going to ungrade my professor to give you a bad evaluation. I will say you are not clear and you do not make yourself available for students.
Please excuse me. I am going to the ladies' room to take a triple dose of my antidepressants and try not to kill myself.
Does that mean you are going to change my grade?
Well, I apologize to every RIT student for humor at their expense, but there is some truth to this humor. So again, I caution you about not falling into these traps, even if you are a woman. Okay. What to include in your syllabus? And again, RIT at the university does not have a syllabus policy. If you come from universities where often there are stated policies, in fact, even a university-prescribed checklist of what must be in your syllabus. We only have one requirement, and that is that the reasonable accommodation statement must be in your syllabus. It must be announced at the beginning of class. But this, I hope, will provide you with some guidance. There's also in the wiki something from the Brigham Young University that provides kind of a checklist for things to think about. And this is sort of a mini version of that. Obviously, course title, number, section, year and quarter, and for IPA, goal semesters. Number of credits, class time, locations, if there are prerequisites. I have often found I do teach courses with prerequisites, and students, you find out that they haven't taken a prerequisite the first day of class, so this is a way of warning them that yes, in fact, is a requirement. Your information, instructor name and title, office location, office hours, contact information. Be sure to let your students know how you prefer to be contacted. I'm explicit in my syllabus. I do not text and I do not tweet with students. It's not because I am a Luddite and anti-technology, it's because if you do, it never ends. So I use the RIT email system, I use my courses, and it also helps avoid that, the immediacy of texting and those kinds of things is they expect an immediate answer back from you. It just takes you out of that morass if you're really clear about how you prefer to be contacted. I don't have any problems with students calling me in my office. I don't have any problems having students email me. And although I do have designated office hours, I still let students know that they can make an appointment to see me. And I also let them know that if they come to my office and I am available, not getting through the locked door, that I will try to accommodate them. But I can't guarantee that I will always be able to accommodate them. And this idea about letting students know how you prefer to be contacted, I can't emphasize that enough. It's very important that they know that you will respond to them in a particular communication methodology. So, course description provides students with an overview, should provide an explanation of how the course will be conducted, what all of your expectations are. What, I always like to get students, put students in a context of, the course subject matter, put it in the context of other things that might be related to other courses in our curriculum, or other things that they might be exposed to as members of a community or as citizens or whatever. Learning outcomes. Those of you who are brand new to RIT, and maybe even those of you who were here the last couple of years, you did not suffer the slings and arrows of having to develop new course outlines with a tremendous emphasis now on learning outcomes. And this is important if you want to be learner-centered. Students need to know what's going to happen at the end of this course. What can I expect in terms of my new understanding? What can I expect in terms of new abilities that I might have acquired by virtue of taking this course? So it identifies specifically what will be learned, conveying to learners what's to be accomplished, and for you as the instructor, it must be observable, measurable, and able to be demonstrated. Students need that. So here's how our Office of Student Assessment is thinking about learning outcomes. These are action words and should help you think about what kind of learning outcomes, what outcomes do you want for students. So it's explain, describe, apply, solve, prepare. Well, I also want to be really clear that I don't know how it works in every department on campus, obviously, but because we were required to put all of our courses in these new course outlines, and this is part of the conversion process, make sure that your learning outcomes and everything else that you put in the syllabus is consistent with the content in that course description. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself in a lot of trouble. Course requirements. I do not grade for attendance, and that's just a personal choice. The reason for it is I say to my students, you're adults, you're grown-ups. You paid a lot of money to be here, or your parents or some scholarship endowment paid a lot of money for you to be here. So show up. This is not a spectator sport, and if you're not here, you can't learn. But if you do want to grade for attendance, then I can understand sometimes why that could be important to a particular subject matter or a particular pedagogical approach. But if you are going to grade for attendance, you must be really, really clear. I don't grade for attendance, I grade for participation. And I have a participation rubric that I give every student at the beginning of the course. And we also have a little workshop on how that rubric works, and I also invite them to make edits to my rubric. And that, one, signals that I am trying to be learner-centered, but it also gives them an immediate opportunity to understand, well, I guess she really means it when she said participation counts. What are you going to do about readings? What are you going to do about textbooks? What your expectations are for group work? Don't just bring it on students if you are going to be using group work. I don't like group work. It's even worse if you don't let them know that that will be part of your approach to your course. And again, participation, as I said, I think participating is a more important metric than showing up. And so I focus on that. And then if there are any other required materials or supplies. What are you going to do about extra credit? Here's what I think. Ethically, if you give one student an extra credit opportunity, you must give every student an extra credit opportunity. If you have a class with 100 students, that's a lot more work for you. And I'm not saying that teaching should be about self-preservation, but so that you don't get to taking those 3 antidepressants, you have to be fair to yourself in terms of what you're expecting of students, and then what kind of expectation does that create for you. So extra credit can be a real slippery slope. And so how do you deal with that student who says, I'm not doing well in this course, can you give me an extra credit assignment? I say, well, let's look at what's left in the course, and how might I, as the instructor, help you to bring your grade up by the remaining things that will be evaluated in the course. Maybe it's go to the writing lab, maybe it's get some tutoring, maybe, I mean, there are all kinds of things that are available for students in terms of learning support that student who feels that they're not doing well. It's not extra credit that's going to help them anyway, by the way, I believe. Extra credit is just checking the box. So there's something else going on with that student that may require you to respond in a much different way. Academic dishonesty. I put the verbatim RIT's policy on academic honesty in the syllabus. You will find that it's not so strange that students don't know what plagiarism is. As hard as it is to believe, there are a lot of students who don't understand what's the difference between publicly available content and plagiarism, copyright infringement. They don't understand it. Some of them. I don't want to brush all students with the same brush, but paint all students with the same brush. But plagiarism is an elusive concept to many, many young students. They've never encountered, what do you mean I can't take? I once had a student, it was just as bad as this little vignette, copied whole sections out of a UN report. And I said, but this is not yours. Yes, but it's free access content. It's not copyrighted. Well, yes, it is. And besides which, it's plagiarism. RIT policy on academic dishonesty, by the way, says that if you actually believe that a student has committed plagiarism, unfortunately, the burden is on you to prove it. So if there's ever any dispute about academic dishonesty, make sure that your evidence is clear and that you're on solid ground. Otherwise, it could be really painful, even though you know in your heart it's plagiarism. Yes?
Does RIT have access to a program like Turnitin?
Yes, we do have Turnitin, and if you use my courses, you can do it automatically on all your written assignments, which is great. And I say, yes, please do it. And again, particularly students who were not educated in their secondary schools in the United States, we have found that there are a lot of students who don't have American secondary education experience are especially unclear about plagiarism. And so I use Turnitin for every written assignment. Yes?
I'm sorry, what is Turnitin?
Okay, Turnitin is actually a program that's offered through the Wallace Center, and what it'll do, it will scan every single paper or written assignment, and it will then do its magic. I don't know, some of you are probably much more familiar with how the technology works, but it will grab anything that is word for word the same, or even partially the same. And the report that you get as the instructor is Turnitin issues a report, and it will also show you exactly where the plagiarized material came from. It's a fabulous tool. And again, the one thing it doesn't pick up, although sometimes it does, I'm discovering, is the buy your paper. But if buy your paper also plagiarized, it'll pick it up.
I have a question, follow-up.
Excuse me?
I have a follow-up question.
Yeah.
At Rutgers, we use safe assign, so all my written assignments had to go through safe assign. Does Turnitin work like that on your system?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear all of you.
At Rutgers, we used safe assign.
Safe assign?
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
On Blackboard. So all my students, when I give them an assignment, it automatically goes to that plagiarism check. Is that the way it works on
Yes, it is.
courses?
Yeah, it sounds like it's virtually the same as Turnitin. Yeah. Any other questions about this? It's a great tool. I recommend
I
you
also
use
use
it.
it for my doctoral students as well.
Oh, yeah, of course.
All students.
Yeah, that goes without saying, doesn't it, DT? Okay. And what about recording or videotaping in class? Are you going to allow it? Yes.
I have a question about the turn-in software.
Yes.
Does that mean most professors that are having students turn in things electronically on my courses?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it's automatic if you use My Courses, and I think you're going to be learning more about the My Courses tool, but it is, I don't know why you wouldn't use it. I know that sounds arrogant, but it's a great way to assure that, one, your syllabus is now available electronically. So even though you might give them a printed copy the first day of class, it's always there for them electronically on My Courses. And the other advantage of using My Courses, there are tons of advantages, but it allows you to use other social media connections and all kinds of stuff. So My Courses is a really valuable tool, but the Turnitin, there is also a Turnitin capability if you don't use My Courses, which is a little more complicated, but you can work with Wall Center on how to use that. Yes?
I just wanted to clarify, because my experience with My Courses, you do have to enable.
The Turnitin, that's right, thank you.
Yeah, so it's just
Thank
so
you.
it's
Yeah.
clear, it's not automatic.
Thank
but
you. I was
just
not
do
clear
a
about that.
Click, and then
DT.
it's.
Just as an aside, for you guys who are researchers, a lot of the journals, like Academy of Management and those associations are now using plagiarism checks on your papers.
Thank you. Okay. Get the high sign. As I said, the only thing that's required in your syllabus is a statement on reasonable accommodation. You can get it here at this website. The policy actually says you must read it, but I always put it in my syllabus. A daily or weekly schedule, keep students well informed, indicate the schedule tentative. Do yourself a favor. You're going to be all of a sudden getting that great thing. You've been awarded the Nobel Prize and you must come to Oslo, Norway. Well, but I'm teaching, okay? You want some flexibility to get that Nobel Prize. But you've also got some other things that happen, maybe you have a family emergency. So put sufficient flexibility in your schedule just to protect yourself, to make sure that students don't do the gotcha. And then be really clear about what changes you've made to accommodate that. And then, obviously, the schedule helps you to organize your course. Students need to know in evaluation how their progress will be assessed, how their work will be evaluated, how grades will be assigned, how their final grade will be determined. And I will repeat, because it's worth repeating, avoid complicated grading schemes. Give students adequate feedback on their work. One of the biggest complaints I hear often from students is, I never understood why I got a B in that paper. Or I never understood why that assignment wasn't an A. So it's really important that they get enough feedback to know whether exactly how you evaluated the difference between an A and a B. No, you can't throw it up the stairs and the ones that hit the top of the A's. Peer evaluation now is something that I think has a really powerful force. I'm finding that students are more difficult, are more demanding of their peers often than I am. So we sometimes have to temper that a little bit. But peer evaluation is also a learning tool. They reinforce each other's knowledge through peer evaluation. And how to use the syllabus. And Andrew Quagliato will talk about this this afternoon, but I always spend time going over my 11-page syllabus. And the reason I do that is I want to make sure that students understand my language. I want to understand that I want to make sure they understand my intent. If they have questions, and as I said, for the students who are course shopping, there's a chance for them to say, whoa, there's too much work in this class, I'm not sitting here. So it is important. It is an important first day of class exercise. And it's meaningful because they can ask questions. They can let you know if you've not communicated a particular item well in the syllabus. It'll provide you with opportunities for clarification. I revise my syllabus right after that first class because of those questions that students may have as a result of going over the syllabus. So. And then, in particularly, explain how they will use the syllabus of the course. This is, again, the beauty of my courses. I give it to them in printed form on the first day of class. We go through it together. I don't read it verbatim, obviously, but I make sure that they understand my expectations for myself and my expectations for them, particularly how they'll be evaluated. And then I also make it clear that if there are going to be changes to the syllabus, they're going to be posted on the My Courses site. Or if there are changes as a result of the first class discussion, those will show up on the My Courses site as well. But again, it's the guidance document for the student. They should know in a well-constructed syllabus exactly what they are expected to do. I also, in terms of evaluation, let me back up to that a little bit. In terms of evaluation, I also have a whole section that I say, students who have done well in this class in the past have done. And then I tick off. What were those things that students did to get an A? Just so they know. I mean, it's a really important signal, and I find it very useful. Okay. And I will finish up with Grenier here. As I said, her little tiny book is a great resource. This is more than just a source of information we're talking about now. When we talk about learner-centered syllabi, we're talking about a learning tool. Students learning about you, students learning about expectations, students learning about what they'll learn. And then there are all kinds of references, both online, as I said, we posted a few on the syllabi, on the wiki rather, and lots of, and this is not to in any way speak unkindly about our own teaching and learning center, but there are lots of teaching and learning centers at other universities that have done a lot of work in this area that I find those resources very helpful. As I said, the Brigham Young University is a site that I've used as a resource. But there are many, many others, and those are also identified on the wiki. So, I did not leave for you in my last slide my contact information. And the reason for that is, I want you to come to the College of Liberal Arts website and find me. Because I want you to know that even though we're only 4% of the student body, all students must take 25% of their academic credit in the College of Liberal Arts. My little commercial. And so I want you to come to the College of Liberal Arts website and find me and find out about us. Because one of the things that is really important to us is that students understand that their general education experience, their liberal arts electives in the humanities, social sciences, and the arts are equally important to their becoming a well-educated individual. And so find me on the College of Liberal Arts website. And have a great year. We have a few minutes for questions. Anybody have any questions? Oh, wow, you know, I went through my hour and a half worth of material.
You have time.
Boy, I really do talk fast, though. My father used to say to me, the reason you became a lawyer is because you talk a lot and you talk fast. Yes?
You mentioned earlier about text messaging
Yes.
back and forth with students.
Yes.
What's RIT's actual policy about that? I've heard of professors doing that in the past, and when I heard of it, I was like, wow, that's a little bit weird.
What, texting with students?
Yeah, yeah.
It is totally a prerogative to determine what you want to do about that. Oh, and it's one thing I didn't talk about. You do really have to set up guidance for students on what you will tolerate in a classroom, what you won't tolerate in a classroom in terms of electronics. I'm really clear in my syllabus. Turn your cell phones off, put them away. I don't even care if you're vibrating, put them away. And I do not allow laptops in my classroom unless the student demonstrates to me they need it for reasonable accommodation purposes. And the reason I do that again is, just as you saw in this video, you know, I walk around the classroom a lot, can you tell? And I can walk to the back of my classroom and I've seen laptops up and I see Facebook, I see interesting websites, but I don't see anything related to the course. So, you know, we do have some psychologists in the room, I know, because they're in my college. Excuse me for my parochial attitude about the College of Liberal Arts. There is no such thing as multitasking. It doesn't mean you can do lots of things at one time. It means that your brain bounces back and forth from task to task to task to task. Maybe you're doing more things in a condensed period of time, but it doesn't mean that your brain is doing it all at one time. So, and I rely on our neuroscientists to teach me that, because it just seems intuitive to me that I know I can't do more than one thing at a time. You know, I watched when when my children were high school students, you sit in front of the television doing homework. I said, you can't possibly be learning. And it turns out neuroscience backs me up. But the issue of electronics is a really important one. There is now a whole lot of new literature about 17-year-olds being addicted to electronics. This is no joke. And I had a student last year who I talk about it first day of class. I say, please put your cell phone away, please put everything away. He couldn't, you know, he was sitting at underneath. He was thinking, I know what he's not doing. So he's texting. And so I very kindly, privately said, after class, could you stop by for a minute? I said, you can't do that in my class. I know you're not with us, if you're texting especially, because there's none of my material on text. So the question of what you're going to do about that, he kept doing it. And you know, I'm not a psychologist, but I believe this student had an issue with not being able to put it down. And I said, you know, I think you might want to go to the counseling center and talk to them about your need to be electronically connected all the time. And, you know, I wasn't trying to cast aspersion, just saying, you know, have you thought about this? Well, he kept doing it, kept doing it. And finally, I was fed up. And in the middle of class, I said, excuse me, Stephen, could you please go outside and do your texting? Public humiliation works every time. and again, I don't want to be glib about it. I don't use that frequently. But there was no way that I could just break that habit. And I know, and he didn't do well in the class, as you might expect, because he was just totally unattached with what we were doing in the classroom. So you have to be really thoughtful about what you want to do about electronics. You'll get the student who says, oh, but this is the way I take my notes. Yeah, big joke. When you sit in class, and you've got 50 faces looking at you, you see no pens, you see no paper, they're not taking notes. Who are you kidding? They're waiting for you to put your lecture notes online. They're waiting for something else. This is a phenomenon that I've noticed that's happened more frequently over the last 5 or 6 years. They don't take notes. Gosh, you know, to me that is so anathema to my own learning that, but the fact that they need a computer to take notes, I don't buy it, frankly. If it's a reasonable accommodation, absolutely. But I need some evidence that it is a necessary, reasonable accommodation. And again, it's not because I am a Luddite, I'm not anti-technology, but I work really hard to have an engaged classroom. And that's my job. And I don't believe that you can be engaged if you're off talking to your friends in Texas. Yes?
You mentioned during the scheduling portion of your talk about if you had to be out of town,
Yep.
you had to miss a class. What are the acceptable ways of making up for that missed class if you had to be out of town for scholarly reasons or whatever?
You know, there's also a lot of flexibility around that. Some colleagues have a colleague, you know, this is the, I'll help you if you help me when I gotta be out of town. They have a colleague who will come in and perhaps cover that class. You can use electronic media. You can Skype in from your conference. Sometimes people have done that. You can give an assignment that is expected to be accomplished during that class time that doesn't require them to be in the classroom. There are lots of, a variety of ways to make up for that one class time that you've missed. But again, again about the quarter system. 1 week is 1/10 of your course. 2 weeks, we're getting bigger, it's 1/5 of your course, it's 20% of your course. So, you know, if you're going to get the Nobel Prize, I would suggest you go to your dean and say, I'm not coming back the rest of the quarter. But there, you know, it's manageable if it's infrequent and if perhaps a one-time occurrence. If it's more than that, I suggest you talk to your department chair because I think they'll want to help you figure out how, you know, if you're going to give that really important presentation that is going to help you, I don't know, finish your book project, then your department chair should help you figure out what to do in your absence. Yes?
I have a question about social media
Yes.
in classroom and outside because
Can you speak up? I have a hearing problem and I can't hear you.
yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of my students tend to do things like add me on Facebook and things like that, and I was wondering if the school had policies about, you know, whether or not that's a good idea, because, you know, texting and tweeting is one thing, but there's, like, a lot of schools do definitely have that thing where they want people, like professors, to maintain like a certain distance. Can you speak more about that?
I'm not exactly sure what your question is about policy.
Is there like a restriction, or should we like place restrictions to, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think anything that would be of concern to you that suggests that it's not going to be the best learning tool for students, yes. I mean, you have a lot of flexibility, a lot of discretion as to how you want to deliver your course. And if you think Facebook is not a good idea, then clearly you have an opportunity to say so in your syllabus and to act accordingly. I mean, again, I don't know whether it's good or bad, but RIT, if you look at the RIT policies and procedures manual, which is really boring reading, by the way, but it has a lot of important content, especially on what's a requirement to get tenure. You'll find that it's very loose. It says faculty may, faculty may, faculty may. Faculty may post office hours. In my college, you must post your office hours on your door or next to your door. But there's a lot of discretion on the part of the faculty to figure out these things on your own, what you think works best. Yes?
I had a question about how you grade the class participation. When you have these huge classes of a couple hundred kids, how do you, can you give some examples of how you would evaluate participation when you have to evaluate that?
Yes. One way to do it in a really large class is what I call the 5-minute essay. At the end of, you give yourself a remaining 10 minutes of a class. Think in the next 5 minutes, write down the 5 most important things that were talked about today. And it's not going to be graded for content, but it's going to tell you who's listening, who's not listening, who's participating, who's not participating. 5-minute essays are great tools. It's a way of kind of keeping students on their toes, that you want them to participate, you do want them to pay attention to the discussion, and you do want them to understand what's going on. So 5-minute essays are great tools for a whole variety of purposes. Lance?
You mentioned earlier your participation rubric that you put together.
Yep.
Is that something you'd be willing to share with us?
Sure. I'll ask Ann to put it up on the wiki.
Thanks.
Yes?
Could you also share your syllabus then?
Sure.
Thank you.
You assume I have it done.
I'll take lost.
Pardon me?
I'll take lost.
Actually, no, I'd be happy to share my current one. I'm teasing, but when you have an administrative obligation as well as teaching obligations, I won't give up the teaching, by the way. I have that opportunity, but I won't, because it's why I'm here. My syllabus, I had to get in the can last week. Yes?
Could you explain the wiki that you're talking about?
Oh, sorry. I assume it's referenced in the materials?
With your invitation, we sent out a link to our NFL online handbook. In that wiki at the top tab, we'll bring it up after break. How about that? Show it to you quickly. At the top of the wiki page, there's links to orientation topics. So under each presenter today, you'll find Ann Howard's page. And underneath her page will be several resources. Maybe Joe can bring it up quickly. I want you guys to be able to take advantage of your break, though, because you've been sitting for quite a long time.
I'll be around during break if people have more questions or you want to give me some new ideas. I'm always happy to learn from people who have teaching experience or just questions that are the germs of a new idea. So I'll be around. Thank you very much. Have a great year.